What is the most convenient thing in the world? Is it the ability to watch whatever you want when you want? But do movies fill your soul when you're sad or make you feel sick to your stomach after too much? In this world, only one thing could do such tasks. Perhaps streaming stuff is convenient, but possibly the most convenient thing in the world is getting whatever food you want delivered right to your door without a single word spoken.
Welcome to Spoonable Standpoint, the podcast where your hosts Leo and Charlene dig into food culture. In this episode, we'll be discussing how food delivery services and apps arose and how they continued to evolve. Later, we'll dive into whether or not the new form of convenience is worth it and how it has changed into an incredibly convenient luxury. But is there a price to pay for this? And if so, are we willing to change? But first, how did food delivery start?
Food delivery is a nearly perfect modern invention. The ability to eat what you want, when you want it, and where you want is a luxury that has benefited Americans throughout the past few decades. Although extremely new, it is an innovation that seems to have been around for years. And quite surprisingly, it has been.
The first important food delivery was in 1889 when King Umberto and Queen Margherita of Savoy were in Naples. Although it happened quite a bit ago, it is still very reminiscent of many modern food deliveries. Why? Because the Neapolitan dish the king and queen wanted was pizza. Raffaella Esposito, the famous pizza maker, was tasked with making 3 pizzas, and the king and queen's favorite was a pizza with mozzarella, tomatoes, and basil, which was later called a margherita pizza because of how much the queen enjoyed it. I suppose in some way, we still keep the memory of the inaugural food delivery a part of our tradition every time we order pizza.
This was only the beginning, and right away it sparked a change in how we deliver. Well, not America, but first India. While still under British rule at the end of the 19th century, India saw an increase in a specific job, being a dabawala, which literally means one who carries a box. Their job was to give workers hot lunches. A dabawala could go to a restaurant or a home, hop on a train or on their bike, and bring lunch to workers and come back later to get the dishes. Although not modern food delivery, it was definitely much closer than the royal treatment King Umberto and Queen Margherita got. Dabawalas are still an incredibly essential job and are constantly wanted in large Indian cities.
Although pizza is super popular in America to be delivered, one cuisine might top that: Chinese food. The king cuisine of takeout started in LA when the Kinchun Cafe opened in 1922. Their whole thing was that they would make a great meal and you could have it in the comfort of your own home. This was revolutionary because it not only made Chinese food more popular in America, but it gave a new promise that no restaurant could make at that time. And with that promise came a food delivery uprising. But soon after, the television came along. Because people didn't want to miss their favorite show, they would make things at home, since that was also when meals became much easier to make due to pre-made and canned ingredients.
This caused more restaurants to make takeout menus and deliver food because they were losing customers to the simplistic cooking. The 50s is when the next important and possibly restaurant-saving step in food delivery was born: free delivery. In 1952, Casa de Amor in LA offered free delivery on orders more than $2.50, which was a pretty large amount of pizza back then. This later escalated when Domino's began promising 30 minutes or less, which really brought convenience to greater heights.
But nowadays, most people don't call a restaurant to order. They use a food delivery app or website. So how did that start? Pizza Hut was the first company to institute this when they created PizzaNet in the 90s, which accepted the first ever online delivery order. This inspired the company Worldwide Waiter in 1995 to launch, which was the first ordering website that was independently run and not created and owned by a restaurant or restaurant chain.
Although Grubhub launched in 2004, it wasn't until the early 2010s where food delivery companies like Postmates and Grubhub were launched. They both changed the landscape of food delivery forever, since third-party deliverers would take the food instead of the restaurant's delivery guy. After their launches, many other companies began doing similar things to try to get their slice of the lucrative food delivery pie. But are all those companies really as good as they seem? Or is there a dark shadow over the convenience?
Although delivery services are extremely convenient, they aren't necessarily the best option. There are a few reasons why, but one reason for me is that restaurants can make less profit because of them, and it causes them to have to hike up their prices on the delivery app. So I'll give you an example. If you order through the Wendy's app for a Big Bacon Cheddar Cheeseburger Double, it's going to be $6.99. That's just without a combo or anything. But if you order through DoorDash, which is a very big food delivery service, a Big Bacon Cheddar Cheeseburger Double is $9.61. That's about a $2 and just under $2.50 difference of these two prices for absolutely no reason at all. It's the exact same thing, and it's completely different. So, and then this is a big chain that's hiking up the prices, right? Imagine a smaller restaurant that can't necessarily pay its workers all that well, or a restaurant that, because of COVID, has been struggling a lot. They're having to hike up their prices. They're having to pay service fees to this app for delivering their customers their food. And they end up making less profit because of them. And it's also bad for the drivers because the drivers don't get paid super well either. For example, a few years ago, DoorDash started doing this thing where instead of just paying their drivers and then giving them their tip that they earn, their pay was subsidized by their tip, which meant that if, they got $10 from making a delivery and they got a $5 tip, they wouldn't end up getting $15. They'd end up getting $10 because the tip subsidized their paycheck. This is just DoorDash, but other food delivery services have done similar things that have screwed over the restaurants that they are delivering for and the drivers that are delivering for them. So all in all, it's, for most people involved in that process, it's not super beneficial. At least that's how I see it.
But on the contrary, I think it's definitely been a huge help to people over quarantine. The number of delivery sales reached over 2 times the amount of the previous year. And that is billions of dollars. And it is still expected to grow despite the pandemic because I think a lot of people kind of realized how convenient it was and are willing to pay that price. As for restaurants making less profit, I do think that for some of them, as long as they're good, of course, kind of think it's a good investment since being on that platform and being recommended to other people within their area kind of gives them a bit of advertising. I know from personal experience that pretty much almost every restaurant that I frequently go to now and frequently order food from was discovered from when I used Grubhub. And I'm really thankful for that. I was relatively new to the area and now have a new favorite restaurant that just thanks to Grubhub alone. But in terms of how they treat their drivers, I definitely think that there needs to be some change in the way they do it because it is still expected to grow despite the pandemic kind of slowing down. A lot of drivers say it's really tedious, and I know it might not seem like a lot because you're just driving around, but that's kind of the whole reason. Like, you're just driving around. Sometimes it can be really long distances and you're not really feeling like you're doing anything just to earn a small tip and low payment. So a lot of the time it can be really hard for them, but at the same time good for the people if it goes well. A common complaint is that the food came soggy or cold, which is not something I've personally experienced much, and when I did, yes, it was kind of bad and definitely not worth it, but it doesn't happen that often unless you live like really far away from the restaurant or something, which in that case, a lot of the time they won't be able to deliver it. So it really depends on many things, like how good the restaurant is and how quick the delivery is, and overall, a lot of the time, how happy the drivers are.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. It's pretty awesome to have things super convenient. And it's awesome to find these restaurants that you wouldn't have found otherwise. That's happened to me as well a few times. But, like everything good in the world that's convenient, you have to question whether or not it's good that it's convenient, right? What price do you have to pay? And with food delivery services, you most literally pay a price. And that's the problem that I have with it, right? If you order through a restaurant, most of the time they're going to have free delivery. Unless you live like super far away. They'd be like, okay, give us like, $5 or whatever. But if you order through Grubhub, Seamless, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Postmates, whatever, and you're ordering something that's $10 through the restaurant, through the app, it could be like $25 after service fees and higher prices and everything. The only difference is that you're not calling the restaurant. You're just tapping on your phone and then waiting. And so there's that weird thing where it's like how lazy can we get, right? Or how lazy do we want to be, I guess is the right word. Is it too out of our way to call a restaurant? Or is it just better to tap? And depends on the person, really. Some people don't like speaking on the phone, so that app is a lifesaver. Some people are like, no, maybe weird people want to, not weird, I guess. Now, they wouldn't be that weird because everyone wants some social interaction after quarantine, but just calling and hearing someone's voice and being able to talk to people is definitely a plus for that. So there are pros and cons for everything. I know my side. I think anyone who's listening to this knows exactly what my side is. It has been good during quarantine. I'm sure it's kept a lot of restaurants in business. It's awesome because you don't have to go outside. You can stay quarantined and get whatever food you want from anywhere. Just what I'm proposing is the question of whether or not the pros weigh out the cons. And to me, I'm not sure they do, but some people they might.
Regardless if the pros outweigh the cons, there's definitely need for improvement. Like we were talking about before, the condition and pay of the drivers, the quality of the food after it gets delivered, and the portion that restaurants have to give to these delivery services in order to use them. So, in terms of the delivery process itself, one alternative that some people are thinking about are drones. Now, what do you think about those?
Personally, I think it's a little bit silly. The first reason is that it's supposed to come to your door, right? If you live in an apartment building, how does that work? They go to your window? That's a little bit awkward, having to open your window and be like, thank you for the food. But see, it's weirder for it to come to your front door. So all I can imagine is the doorman who is just like a drone, like carrying a bag, and it has to be let in. The doorman's like, what is going on? It presses the elevator button, goes up the elevator, and just goes through the hallway and delivers you your food and then goes away. It's very comical, but it's also a little bit scary. Like, having this drone just fly around and give you food seems very dystopian and weird. So personally, I don't think drones are a very good idea. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, we've been using cars and people for these delivery services for so long, and I definitely think drones would take a while to implement. I mean, as of now, they can't really carry that much weight, and especially for larger orders, that could be an issue. And like you were saying before, how would they go up apartment buildings and other similar obstacles? But I kind of want to talk a little bit more about like the more interesting and unconventional ways that restaurants have come up with to try to kind of reinvent that sort of experience. For example, with Domino's, they have this thing where if you tweet a pizza emoji, they will send you pizza. You still do have to make an account and connect it to your Twitter, but that's just one kind of unconventional way to do so. And it kind of gets you associating Twitter with pizza if you use it a lot. And I don't know, maybe every time you open Twitter now, you think of ordering a pizza, which is obviously beneficial to them. But they're already known for their quick delivery. Speaking about marketing and not just future marketing, I feel like it's kind of imperative that in this episode we talk about that iconic cringe Grubhub ad. Now, while of course many people on the internet may make fun of it and make jokes about it, and I have to admit a lot of the memes I've seen of it were kind of funny, but I do think that it brought sort of a marketing spike for them and kind of just made everyone sort of aware that these services exist again if you didn't already use them quite often over the quarantine. And it's not like a mistake that would get customers to stop using it or that would get potential customers to stay away from it. So, marketing definitely does play a huge role in this, as it does with almost anything. But I wonder how this stacks up to the other ways that food delivery can grow and improve in the future.
So, the stuff you're talking about, it all just seems like the future is more convenience, right? Mostly for the consumer, I should say. Tweeting something, just a single emoji, boom, you have food, awesome. Or now companies are starting, companies like Apple and Samsung are starting to put apps in smartwatches so you can order food. Or some companies are starting to think about being able to quickly order from your car. You just press a button and be like, hey, can I have this? And they're like, okay. And then you drive by and you have the food. Kind of like a drive-through, but before you know you want the food, I guess, is the best way to describe it. And yeah, no interaction needed. But all those things just seem to have a lot more issues. And I feel like something that it takes the least amount of time, cheapest amount of money to get something is not always the best. We talked about this in our ramen episode, but when things are cheaper, they aren't always the best, but they can be, I guess, spiced up. So, to be honest, I think those things will just make things a lot worse for some people. Number one, if you have drones, or if you're able to really easily order from your car, then what's the point of having the drivers? So all the drivers have jobs. And so it's all just, it all just becomes such a tricky and complicated thing, where in the end, the more convenient you get, I think the harder it is for different groups of people, except for the consumer. That's America. Nothing's ever difficult for the consumer. Personally, I think the future of food delivery will just be making it cheaper. Because convenience is one thing, right? Everyone loves convenience. But the thing that really gets your company or a food or something very popular, and we talk about this in a ramen episode, the cheaper something is, and more convenient it is, the better it is. Right now, food delivery services are convenient. They're just not very cheap. You're paying a lot more than you would if you just ordered through the restaurant or if you went to the restaurant. So food delivery services need to find a way to make it cheaper. And maybe that's using drones, right? You don't have to pay people. Okay, fine. Maybe that's, I don't know, monopolizing and having a huge hand on the strings of the industry, So in my opinion, the way that it could only move forward is to make it, yes, convenient, but also cheaper. And I think that's the problem that a lot of people have with them. And I think that's what the future is going to look like. Them just getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Hopefully, at least.
But an important question that arises from that is where does the money come from? How do the drivers get paid, and how does Grubhub make money if they're not getting the commission for having that restaurant on their service? And I think a pretty big part of it could just be removing the drivers out of the equation. Now, listen, they're great and they saved us through the pandemic, but they can be expensive, and for them, I'm pretty sure they don't enjoy their job, especially because of how tedious it is, like I was saying before. As new and more innovative technologies like drones and as the pandemic lessens, despite expected growth of food delivery services, the system definitely needs to be changed. So, what is the future of food delivery services? Although it might be hard to say since they're extremely convenient now, it could be something along the lines of no human contact necessary. But will that actually happen? Are these services able to do that? And if so, would they? If not, higher prices are likely to come. But in the end, the biggest question should be asked, how convenient is convenient enough? Or will it never be?
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Spoonable Standpoint. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at spoonable_standpoint for our latest updates, link to our website, and other bonus content. If you enjoy this episode, don't forget to share it. We release a new episode every other Friday, and we hope to see you there.